Imagine this. You are a Latino activist in Texas. You've spent years encouraging your community to vote. You believe in democracy. You believe in making your voice heard. Then one day, armed officers burst into your home. They claim it's a raid. They say it's about voter fraud. But you know the truth. This is intimidation. This is the GOP's new tactic to silence dissent and cling to power. This isn't a scene from a dystopian novel. This is happening right now. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, a Republican, has unleashed a wave of these raids. His targets, Latino communities. His goal, to instill fear, to discourage voting. This is a blatant assault on democracy, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. This is not just about Texas. This is about the future of America. This is about whether we will tolerate these attacks on our fundamental rights. The answer must be a resounding no. To understand the GOP's current tactics, we need to look back. We need to confront the ugly history of voter suppression in America. The echoes of Jim Crow are deafening. For decades, Black Americans were denied the right to vote through violence, intimidation, and discriminatory laws. Poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clauses were all used to disenfranchise black voters. These tactics were abhorrent. They were a stain on our nation's soul. And yet, here we are again. The tactics may have changed, but the goal remains the same: to silence the voices of those who threaten the GOP's grip on power. The GOP is trying to rewrite history, but we must not let them. We must remember the past, fight for the present, and secure the future of voting rights for all Americans. Texas has become ground zero for the GOP's assault on voting rights. It's a state where restrictive voting laws are passed with alarming regularity. These laws, often cloaked in the language of election integrity, are nothing more than thinly veiled attempts to suppress the vote. Take Texas's voter ID law, for example. It requires voters to present one of a limited number of forms of identification. Seems reasonable, right? Wrong. The law disproportionately disenfranchises minority voters who are less likely to have the required ID. It's a modern-day poll tax, plain and simple. Then there's the attack on early voting. Texas Republicans have slashed early voting periods, making it harder for working people and people of color to cast their ballots. They've also made it more difficult to register to vote and limited the availability of polling places in minority communities. Texas is a cautionary tale. It's a stark reminder of what happens when those in power prioritize their own interests over the rights of the people they are supposed to represent. Florida, the Sunshine State, is casting a long shadow on voting rights. Governor Ron DeSantis, a rising star in the GOP, has been at the forefront of this assault. Under the guise of preventing voter fraud, DeSantis has signed into law a series of restrictive voting measures. One of the most egregious provisions makes it more difficult for third-party organizations to register voters. This is a direct attack on groups like the League of Women Voters, who have been instrumental in registering minority voters. DeSantis has also made it harder to vote by mail, a method that saw increased use during the pandemic. He's imposed new requirements for mail-in ballots, including stricter signature matching requirements, which could lead to ballots being rejected. Florida's actions are a clear attempt to silence the voices of marginalized communities. They are a betrayal of the very principles of democracy. Section 5. The erosion of democracy, a nation divided. The GOP's voter suppression tactics are not just an attack on individual rights. They are an attack on the very fabric of our democracy. A healthy democracy depends on the participation of all its citizens. When a significant portion of the population is denied access to the ballot box, our democracy weakens. These tactics create a vicious cycle. As more people are disenfranchised, they become disillusioned with the political process. They lose faith in the system. This apathy only emboldens those who seek to maintain their grip on power, leading to even more restrictive voting laws. The GOP's actions are pushing us closer to a system where only a select few have a say in how our government is run. This is not democracy. This is minority rule. We must not let them succeed. Section 6. The crushing weight of suppression on voter turnout. The GOP knows that the more people vote, the less likely they are to stay in power. That's why they target voter suppression efforts at communities that traditionally vote for Democrats, particularly black and brown voters. They understand that high voter turnout is a threat to their agenda. Studies have shown that voter ID laws, restrictions on early voting, and other suppressive measures have a disproportionate impact on minority voters. These tactics create confusion, sow distrust, and erect unnecessary barriers to the ballot box. The consequences are dire. When people feel like their votes don't matter, they are less likely to vote. This leads to a less representative government where the needs and concerns of marginalized communities are ignored. Section 7. The urgency of now, a call to arms. The assault on voting rights is happening right now. It is relentless and it is spreading like wildfire. We cannot afford to be complacent. We must act now to protect this fundamental right. The fight for voting rights is a fight for the soul of America. It is a fight for our democracy. We must meet this challenge with the same urgency and determination that activists have shown throughout our nation's history. This is not a partisan issue. This is about protecting the fundamental right of every American to have a say in how our country is run. We must stand together regardless of party affiliation to defend our democracy from this existential threat. Section 8. Safeguarding our birthright. The fight for the soul of America. The right to vote is not a gift from the government, it is a birthright. It is enshrined in our Constitution. It is the foundation upon which our democracy is built. We must not allow anyone to take it away from us. We need to fight back against these attacks on multiple fronts. We need to challenge these restrictive voting laws in court. We need to push for federal legislation that protects voting rights for all Americans. And we need to educate ourselves and others about the importance of voting. This is a fight that will require sustained effort and unwavering commitment. We must be vigilant, we must be relentless, we must never give up. Section 9. The power of one. Your voice, your vote, your democracy. Your voice matters, your vote matters. You have the power to make a difference. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Get involved. Volunteer with organizations that are fighting for voting rights. Donate to support their efforts. Talk to your friends and family about the importance of voting. Every vote suppressed is a voice silenced. Every voice silenced is a blow to our democracy. We must make sure that every eligible voter can cast their ballot and have their voice heard. Section 10. A more perfect union, a future where every vote counts. Imagine a future where every eligible American can vote freely and fairly. Imagine a future where the right to vote is protected, not attacked. Imagine a future where our democracy is truly representative of all its people. This is the future we must fight for. This is the future we must demand. It is a future where every vote counts and where our voices united can create a more perfect union. We must never forget that the fight for voting rights is ongoing. It is a fight that each generation must take up and carry forward. We must be the generation that finally breaks the cycle of voter suppression and creates a democracy that truly works for all.